over the last 6 months, I've been trialing 9 different fertilizers which are available here in Latvia. I've separated the bed into 10 sections. The 10th section was a control section, and in each section I planted a variety of different vegetables. In a previous video, I explained in some detail the kind of some metrics and data about those fertilizers and my initial thoughts. And then in this video, I will take you through the story of how they've grown. We will look anecdotally at some of the results, and I will also look perhaps a bit more scientifically at some of the results as well. We will look at things like how effective the fertilizer was. We will look at soil, bare soil. We will look at, by analysing the surface of the beds. We'll look at things like the instructions, how good were the instructions, and also the weight of the tomatoes, because we grew some tomatoes here. So we'll look at harvest results as well, some yields. After that, I will give you some final thoughts, because I've actually learned a lot through this process about fertilisation and about, I guess, the industry a bit here in Latvia. And I'm sure that's not unique to Latvia. It's probably some problems that I've unearthed regarding instructions of fertiliser that are problems around the world. So without further ado, let's get on with our first part, and that's when we started. We'll go back to May. At this point, I've already initially fertilised the beds in the first video, and now we're planting out seedlings and starting to fertilise some individual seedlings and continue that journey. Okay, day one of planting stuff out. Cabbages Express, got 10 really nice transplants here to take out. Got all our fertilisers here. I'll put these in the corner of each bed and space it out. And what I'm going to do for this is put a handful of each fertiliser underneath the roots, which is pretty standard for a cabbage. Even if the instructions don't say that, I think to keep it fair, I'll do it all the same on the cabbages and then follow the instructions as per the fertiliser for anything else that I plant. So cabbages going in. Okay, it's now a few days on from planting the cabbages. Today we're going to get this lot out, what we have space for. Just want to show you the quality of the seedlings really. So we've got some parsley there, petersilia, beets there, some nice looking beets, salads here, and a few onions. And now these don't look so great, but I'm hoping that they'll spring back to life. Not the tomatoes, they were just using some space. The bed's still looking good, not particularly weedy as you'd expect really. A little bit horsetail, mare's tail there. And a couple of the beds of no pests really to speak of, which is good considering the cabbage, because you've only got one, and a mole's been in a couple of places, but hopefully we'll deal with the mole. But yeah, so we'll get this lot in. I'll be applying the fertilizers or dressing them as per the instructions. Some say side dress, some don't say anything, and some say water with the fertilizer in. So we'll do that as instructed. Okay, following the instructions on the Raksi packet, I've dissolved in the watering can. It seems to have dissolved nicely yesterday, and now I'm going to apply it as instructed. And there's still quite a lot of pellets left in there. That's a bit disappointing. So it obviously takes longer than 12 hours. This is over a day actually of disintegration. Did I do anything wrong? I don't know. I've put a tiny bit more water in there just to give it a good shake. I can still hear whole granules in there, but I'm hoping to get more of it out. I'm doing what it should be doing. Not good. Not good at all. I did give it a good stir as well, so I don't know. He obviously needs longer. Okay, June the 9th. Quick update on the trial. Everything's going okay. There are some notable, I think, things at this stage, although it is a little bit early. If you remember, the cabbages were sown with the respective fertiliser underneath them, so they've all got their own kind of food source. And we can see, like the first one, which was the chicken feed, chicken manure, and perhaps the last one, which was the food scraps compost stuff from Estonia or Finland, I can't remember now. Doing quite well. These three not doing so well, and of course the control bed with no fertiliser at all is showing signs, comparing to the others, that it's struggling a bit. This is the the sheep's wool, which is to be expected to a degree, because that takes a little bit more to break down, a little bit longer to become plant available. So I'm expecting it to kick in a bit later, and it might be a slow start. This was the Raksi poop from the zoo, which I've had problems with distribution, but it is underneath the plant, so maybe that just takes a bit longer to become plant available. We know it's not as strong as the other ones. This is the Lutzers, the alfalfa trial, and this one was the green OK. So yeah, the only other thing I think noteworthy really is the onions in the general organic garden fertiliser are doing very poorly. This is the one that had quite a high acidic level. It already came with its own domolite flour in it to sort of raise the alkalinity in it. So maybe the onions are struggling with the acidity a little bit. All four are struggling, whereas I think all the onions of the others, that one's got one missing, but the others, whilst they're getting over the transplant shock, they're growing new shoots and they're doing okay. Lettuces are all alive and growing slowly, showing some new growth. Yeah, apart from that, everything okay. The only thing left to plant now is I'm going to put, we've got some carrots, as you've just seen, sown in these patches here. We'll wait a week or so for them to germinate. We've had lots of rain, so it keeps the soil moist to be good. In this space here that's left is just the tomato plant to go in the next couple of days, when I know that there's going to be a couple of days without rain. And that's it. That'll be all the planting done then, and we'll continue watching the trial over summer. Okay, June the 13th, Friday the 13th, oh dear. Planting out bush tomatoes. I've got a few here, but well, I've got more than I need, but we'll put some in the other parts of the garden. So one in each bay, and I'll put a kind of a gardener's handful of each fertiliser under the plants. What can I say? Yeah, bush tomatoes. I've waited this long because we've had so much rain. If you're a gardener here in Latvia or in the Baltics, you'll know about how much rain and cold temperatures we've had early June. Just to be safe, as they're outdoors, I didn't want to put them out and then just have a week's worth of rain kind of on top of them constantly. Although it can rain more next week. But anyway, today's a nice day. I'm going to get the tomatoes out, and then the beds will be full. There won't be anything more added. Once the carrots come up and germinate, which they should do this week, hopefully, or next week, then that's it. And we'll just do weeding and look after it, and then report back on the results. So let's get some tomatoes planted. Okay, so this is the I forget the name of the brand now, but the Finnish Estonian granule stuff. It looks like something's got to one of the lettuces. Can't be helped. One of those things, cutworm, I expect. No doubt, if I put my hand down and drag it up, there'll be a worm underneath. If I can catch it in time. There, look. There it is. Trying to escape. So they're like mealworm, beetle larvae or something. They dig into the root and then the plant dies. It's just one of those things. And so, will it? It's a shame, but never mind. Nothing to do with the fertiliser, of course, just one of those things of gardening. And considering nothing else has died so far, that's not bad going, really. Okay, I thought as the watering experiment or experience with this product wasn't very good, I thought it might be interesting actually to look at all the granulated products to see how quickly they dissolve into water, basically how soluble they are. Just out of interest, really, because yeah, like I say, just because of that one, really. So what I'll do is okay, what we'll do is leave these for 12 hours now, which is what that product recommended before it was watered. We'll see what they look like in 12 hours in terms of how they've dissolved. Okay, it's now 12 hours later. Let's have a quick look. It's the morning the next day. So Formula 4X still looks fairly liquidy, and the granules are still crunchy. Not a lot of solubility there. The Biolan chicken and poo mix, that's actually blended quite well, I think. Fairly soluble. I can't really feel any granules in the bottom. The meslololiums done. That's quite a good job. There's a couple of granules at the bottom, but they have dissolved well. The Kekile, this is the food industry derived. Yes, I think that's dissolved. Yeah, bit of a mud, so that's good. The mesliums, the Raksi cameloid. Started to dissolve. This is what happened with the, but still big pellets in there. Yeah. So we lost audio at that point for some reason. I think the microphone batteries went dead. But anyway, the last one to test is the sheep's wool product from Biolana, and that disintegrated really well in the water. So there was no problem with that whatsoever, really. So it was just really the Raksi cameloid poop, which didn't dissolve, and the Green OK Formula 4X, which didn't dissolve. Well, that hardly dissolved at all. At least the camelloid one did start to. Okay, bit of a midsummer update on what's going on. There are, I think so far, winners and losers. So if you remember, the order of planting was cabbage, parsley, beets, onions, carrots, and then finally the tomato. So the tomato's only been in about a week, something like a week, 10 days, can't remember now. So what's going on? I mean, the cabbages, I think you can see some vast differences. What's really interesting, I mean, those down there are doing really well. So it's the chicken manure, the fish manure, the organic powder manure stuff, and I boost plant, where is mess legumes. Surprised by the alfalfa. That's very poor response. In fact, even poorer than the control without any fertiliser. So it seems that the alfalfa is an inhibitor rather than a fertiliser. Similar story with the beetroot. Some good, really nice beetroots here with the fish zivy mildew, the fish flower, and they're not so good, and the control obviously bad. Much of muchness with the, I guess similar story with the lettuces. Maybe a bit early to tell, but again, these growing really well down this end. And onions, these are all dead. This was the I got it wrong last time actually. I said it was the organic thing, but this is the fish flower. Obviously the onions really didn't like fish flour for some reason, but the other one is doing okay from the same brand. Carrots have only just germinated, so a bit too early to say. And actually the germination is probably going to be a bit patchy because I've used the same brand of carrots in mine and it's really patchy as well. So we'll see. And tomatoes, well, I mean, obviously the control doing very poorly, very yellow leaves. The other ones seem to be doing okay. Even the alfalfa one, it's got really nice green leaves in the centre. That one not doing so well. The green okay, I think that is. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where we are midsummer. We'll continue with the trial and look forward to what happening in July. Okay, mid-July update, July the 14th today. We've had, if you're in Latvia, you know this already, but we've had some unprecedented rains in July and June, to be fair, and the beds have been taking the right hammering in terms of kind of washing out nutrients and stuff like that. So, but let's take a look at what's happening with these trial beds now. We can see more evidence of winners and losers, I guess. The cabbages are starting to head up. There's a bit of pest damage here, but not. The heads inside are quite nice. So we have here the fermented chicken poo pellets. Here's the mess lululums, which I think was that blood and bone meal type pellets. Nice tomato growing here, not so far better here than here. Fish meal, again, nice tomato plant now, grown nicely. These look like the best beetroots as well, going by the leaves. And then there's the organic mushrooms from the same manufacturer. I think that's the kelp and stuff like that. Parsley plants, petersilia, lapis, doing okay down this end as well. Again, beetroots okay. Nice lettuces down this end. And then we get here, which was I think the 4X green okay stuff. Not a very good looking tomato plant. Everything else quite small. The parsley's doing okay. Similar story here. Tomatoes doing better though, a bit better. Carrots have been a bit of a disaster, but as I said before, we didn't have great germination with the same seeds on the other beds. Tomato not looking that great here. Cabbage, I mean, there's the alfalfa pellets. This was Raksi cameloid poop. Not great cabbage. Tomatoes, similar, I suppose. Everything else quite small. Lamb, this is the sheep's wool, looking a bit better actually than these kind of two middle three. Perhaps that sheep's wool nitrogen now is being released and it's sort of catching up a bit. There's some nice colour in the leaves, still not as big, but the petersilia parsley plant's looking okay. Really nice, comparable now back to a really nice tomato plant. Cabbage, not great. It started off well, but then it sort of, ran out of nitrogen really. And yeah, tomato seems to really like it though. This is the food scraps compost, the pellets thing. And then the control bed, this tomato is kind of looking better than one of the ones down there. So, but everything else is quite small. Again, parsley seems to do well with nutrients or lack of nutrients. So there we are, July the 14th. Soon, I think we're probably going to start harvesting some of this. So we, make use of all this food that we got. But most of it can just stay here, and then we'll see what happens. Before I started pulling things out of the beds, what I needed was a fair way to assess how successful they've been, rather than kind of anecdotal comments about how big the cabbage is or how well the beetroots have done at this point. And I thought the best way to do it was to do some kind of analysis of bare soil. So what I need to do is find a way to analyse that. First of all, I thought I was going to have to use AI and all those kind of things, and it was going to be a bit of a palaver, and I would have to sign up for some professional AI usage because it was quite detailed analysis of photos. But actually, it was a lot more simpler than that. Well, I call it simpler, using tools which are already out there that I've already got, and a web service as well. So essentially, we've got all the photos of the beds from overhead. It doesn't matter whether it's landscape or portrait. So I went along taking the photos, and essentially for each bed, well, for each section, we're only interested in the bits which are within the boundaries of the wooden sticks and the path, of course. There's a lot of sort of averages and arbitrary lines, I suppose, but because of the wood chips and things like that. But anyway, that is how it works. So I then uploaded the photo to my Fireworks, which is my graphics program, cut it. So once it was cut, I then took a brush with a red dotter on, and just drew where the leaves were, basically, where I could see leaves. There's a few places where I missed or whatever, but on average, each photo will have a bit missed or a bit extra. Then I needed to find out what was the difference between what was not red, basically. So what wasn't red was soil. And then, so what I did was took a magic wand tool and clicked the areas which I wanted to remove. Oops. Which left white or red, as is this section here, which was the exported version of this. So once I've got an exported image, which is essentially red and white, I could then go to a web service, which a color summarizer. I can then upload that file, which is this file here. Select two colors, red and white, and then this will do the work of analysing the image and simply tell me how much is white and how much is red. As the image is analysed, and there are the results. 19.75% is bare soil. And I used that to make my assessment. There on the spreadsheet, there were the original data figures we used in the first video, and there's the bare soil analysis. One of them was perfectly 34%, but the first one. And there are the score results based on these. You can see, for example, reference the 10th plot, which was no fertiliser. The control bed was 57% bare soil, so obviously it had the lowest score. Okay, fertiliser trial garden update for August the 16th, middle of August. You know, we're coming towards the end of the trials. So we're now looking at things like beetroot and the tomato plants, I think, and maybe the parsley as well. So some of the cabbages I've pulled out, they're kind of finished. The smaller ones are still there. So it looks like the fish meal is doing the best for the beetroots. Nice size, you know, they're multi-sown, but there's some nice size beets on there. We could pull, if I was growing these in my garden, in fact these are doing better than mine. If I was growing these in my patch, I would be pulling one of those out to leave more space for the other two to grow. And the others are kind of a salad size. Interesting with the blood and bone meal stuff, seems to be a lot of leaf miner on there, a little bit on here, and not any on there. So that's quite interesting, that why the leaf miner have attacked this plant more. And as with other things, you know, the beetroots generally are doing okay. I mean, the control garden, they're obviously the smallest with no fertiliser, but they're not that bad. That one there, which is it the alfalfa? Probably, or on the next one with the Garden Forex is the smallest. Those leaves probably are not that great, but anyway, tomato plants, like other things we've seen, the plants down this end are doing better. Nice crop of tomatoes on there with the blood and bone meal. Then, which is actually interesting because it's quite low in potassium for the fruit, but nevertheless, blood meal. Fish meal. Okay, and if you want a comparison, they're the same plants that I've grown with there. So my own fertiliser mix, that's the best you'll probably get in terms of the quality as a control. So we've got the worst down there and then the best over there, and these are, you know, comparable to those best, to be fair. And then they get worse and worse down here, and as you expect, the no fertiliser plant is really struggling. But there's 2 or 3 tomatoes on there. The parsley, actually much of a muchness, as we would say in English. So, you know, and the control, interesting, the control parsley bush is bigger than this one, which I think is interesting. But they're much for muchness, really. One's gone to seed, but that's the way nature works sometimes. Okay, so today we're going to weigh the tomatoes and just, you know, do a table of the weight, the harvest result. Tomatoes are still green. We've had, this summer continues, and there's no hope of harvesting them red. So I think we'll just get them in, weigh them, and then see how that lies. So we'll do that now. $702. And then now wait. Control bed is 334. Okay, we're now into September, middle of September, and it's time to kind of bring our trial to an end. What we've got left, as well as a load of parsley, is we need to just harvest the beetroot and see where we are with that. Now, I can't do a weight comparison on this because I multi-sowed the beetroot, which means I can't guarantee there were the same amount of beetroot in every plot. There could have been 3 or 4 in each hole, sort of thing, which is what happens with multi-sowing. But we can pull them out and we can have a look. We've had a look at leaves over the last few months, haven't we? And we still can now, actually. But we now look at the roots, see what's happening with the roots, see if there are any surprises and any obvious differences between the 10 different spaces. So let's do that. Okay, so I've now pulled them out and laid them aside. To be honest, it's much of a muchness. Very difficult to call. There is an obvious winner, but below the winner, it's really difficult to call. So I just really need to do some observations and see what you say. Let's start off with the control bed. No fertiliser at all. One decent beetroot. Considering they're multi-sown, they're not single ones. I know people in Latvia normally grow single ones, but one big one and 2 sets of 3s. And the rest are kind of salad ones or just can't do anything with. Boil it out for the chickens. And then at the other end of the scale, I think the obvious winner would be the fish meal fertiliser with some, again, 6 or 7 actually, and mostly really big, well, not really big, but, nice sized beetroots. I've seen humongous ones here. I think it was interesting that this one, the blood and bone meal, it's the Messalulum's eye plant booster, whatever it's called in English. Not great leaves on that one for some reason. And some, and there's things like there's a massive, in the chicken manure pellets, there's a huge one there, but the rest is sort of average. These are average. The organic, same brand as this, the fish meal, but the organic, what they call it, they're both organic, but what they call organic garden fertiliser, which is more, I think, seaweed, stuff like that. Average again. Now, this one's a nice, this is that's a 4X, I think, Garden 4 Pro, and that's the Lutzen as the alfalfa. And then the Raksi, pretty small tiddler ones there, not that great. But these 3 are right. The sheep's wool's done quite well. I noticed that the leaves are really good on those. 3 really nice ones there. The other batch of 2, kind of average. But this is probably close. I think this is probably second place, to be honest. This one, the sheep's wool, performed well. They've all got kind of decent leaves on them. And then the food scraps, kind of compost 1, again, sort of 4 tiddlers there, 2 okay ones and a small one. Undoubtedly where there was 4, you can argue whether it's a bit of a squeeze, but even so. But if you like your leaves, then they've all done really well. Clearly beetroot don't need as many nutrients as perhaps as other vegetables. But make of that what you will, really. I think 1 clear winner, clear is probably second place, and the rest average, and maybe 1 or 2 which perform badly. So that's that. I think that's the end of the trial, really. The carrots didn't germinate very well. There are a few around, but how good they're nowhere near as good as my carrots over there, and which we've been pulling and eating already. No, that one's not too bad. That's a nice carrot, I suppose. We can have a quick look and see. And there's a tiddler, you see. That's kind of what you're getting. It's not really fair trial. On the control one, there's one here. Yeah, not that great. So I'm probably not going to do anything with the carrots. There's a few here, but I think they're just going to be small ones. Yeah. Yeah, they're right for a soup, aren't they? This is organic. 1, 2, 3, 4, the organic compost one. Not bad, but you know. So yeah, that's that. What I'm going to do now, I think, is go and do some thinking. For you, it'll be a few seconds. For me, a little while, and draw some conclusions from this trial, and then we can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so before we move on to this last section and discuss the results, I just wanted to make it clear, if I haven't already, that obviously, first of all, I'm a gardener, I'm not a scientist. Secondly, these results are based on my experience this year in my garden with my soil and my weather conditions. On that note, we've had one of the toughest growing summers on record. We've had unprecedented rains and lower temperatures. Not only me as a gardener that's found it difficult, farmers across Latvia have also really struggled. Second point is the results are based on two factors: non-performance items such as cost and instructions, and performance related such as yields and how much bare soil was left and things like that. And the third point, and the most important I think, is the aim of this video was not to crown an overall winner and say this product is the best, because what works for me might not work for you. What I really wanted to do was to help you make better informed choices. And secondly, I wanted to help the manufacturers to improve their game. I should point out that the product which scored the highest still only scored 75% of the maximum score. And so there was lots of room for improvement, and I want to feed back, of course in English, I want to feed back to those manufacturers how things could be improved, how you could better inform things for customers so that customers can make better informed decisions when they buy fertiliser. So with all that said, now let's look at the results. Hello, editing Gary here. So before we look at the results, a week ago I put a preview version of this video up onto YouTube and wrote to all 8 companies involved, sending them a link to the preview and asking or inviting them would they like to comment on my findings. As of this date, Friday, which is 4 or 5 days on from that, I've heard back from 3 of the companies, and of that, 2 of those companies, well, all 3 were thankful for the work I'd done, and 2 of them said they were going to take away what I'd said and suggested and take positive action to improve the instructions on their products, which is fantastic. I couldn't ask for more, really, because it's a lot of work to get to that point, to get the action. But if you want to take action to improve things, you have to put work in, don't you? So here we are. So I'm really pleased with that. It's a shame that all companies didn't respond, and hopefully they did get the email. It wasn't just a communication error sort of thing. And maybe they will respond at a later date, which is okay, fair enough. But it would have been nice to include their comments in the video. So for Biovilla, the wool pellets, Biolana, the chicken manure, and Cabbages, the fish meal and the organic meal. Thank you very much for responding. And now we'll go and look at the results. Okay, so let's look at non-performance related results. We're looking at things like instructions, ease of use, and cost. Now the cost is pretty easy. That is a data metric taken from the first video when I calculated all the costs. And so we don't need to really look at that in any more detail. It was provided in the first video. Ease of use was simply how easy to distribute the product and use it as it's intended. The fish meal and the other products from Cabbages were really easy to use because they are like a flour, a meal, and very easy to distribute. The alpaca products, the pellets were really big, and it makes it difficult to use, I think, to distribute in a bed. They're okay for putting under seedlings, but then so is all the other products. There's no difference there, really. But yeah, so that's how that was scored. And this was, whilst this was a physical metric, as in the product said how many meters squared it was used for, or you could do a calculation. This was just my own opinion, really. And then instructions. I want to delve into instructions a bit deeper and give some examples why this was problematic and how the industry and the individual products could be improved and made better for people who are making decisions both with purchasing and using the products. So you'll see that the alpaca product is the bottom for the cost and ease of use. However, it's number one for its instructions. So let's start with that one and show you a good example of why that was 10. So here we are on the Raksi BO products page. First of all, in terms of the scoring for the instructions, I gave 4 points for information when using the product and 4 points for any follow-up information. In other words, feeding later in the season, up to 4 points, I mean. And then 2 points were for, was there an English version available and was it understandable? English is the second language of the EU, by the way, so it should be made available. I don't, even though I speak, my native tongue is English, I don't particularly need it in this instance, but it's good, I think, to have it. These products are sold over the border as well, not just in Latvia. So, okay, good instructions here, good English, and I think I like the way that they present them. They seems to make it clear as to how the product should be used. The range between is small. The range of grams is small, between 100 and 120. That's an acceptable range, or 200 to 250. Not too big. I still would like it a bit maybe tighter, but it's not so much a problem for this. Good instructions for individual types of what you're growing, like tomatoes, and I saw somewhere else down here carrots and things like that. And this is what I really liked, is they give two options. So pour a handful of granules, or you can put it into a watering can. And what I also liked with the Raksi, which there was only 2 products that did this, is they instructed you to repeat this process every 2 to 3 weeks as part of a kind of a feeding regime. So, in fact, this was the only product that advised you that you should do it more than once, one follow-up. The other products, so this is why I gave Raksi 10 out of 10, really, because it gave me all the information I needed. I didn't need to think about it. It was just there. I just need to follow the instructions. The fact that it didn't work is a different issue, really. The other product, the Biolan, which is the chicken manure pellets. Now, they drop points because there's no English version. There is an English website, but this product doesn't appear on that website for some reason. Nevertheless, the Latvian I can follow here. So they give you, what I quite liked about this one is they give you, this is what you should do in spring. Pavasari is spring. And this is what you should do during the growing period, which they say June or July, which that's fine. So perhaps a month or 6 weeks later. So you need to follow up. What I found just bizarre about this was that they were giving you product information in litres per 100 metres squared. Well, I'm not a farmer. I'm not. I don't have that kind of size of territory that I need to work with. So I'm not going to be calculating for 100 metres squared, and I certainly don't want it in litres. It's a granulated product, which I'm most likely going to weigh. I know it's a simple mass calculation. However, for the customer, you need to make it clear at the point of sale, they're making a decision about what product they're going to buy, and they want clear information which they can think about on the spot and make a purchasing decision. that's not particularly that clear. Well, it's not clear at all, really. And it's also even 3 to 500 millilitres per metre squared. There's a big range there. I've got to think about why is it 200 millilitres or 200 grams difference? Tell the person why. Either choose 40 in this case, choose the middle for them, just give them an idea, or tell them why it's different. Like in the previous products that gives you different vegetables. And in fact, to be fair, a few of them did give options for different vegetables, which is great. So we've covered there the alpaca poo and the chicken and seaweed, which is in the middle there. We look at the bottom, the green oak. Well, look at the fish meal and the other product of the organic kelp meal, which are both by the same manufacturer. So that's why I'm looking at those. So product page is in English, or there's an English version, which is great. The thing I struggle with here is there's one paragraph, actually one sentence. When growing seedlings, apply 2 to 400 grams per square metre. That, 2 to 4. What is it? Is it 2 or is it 4? Is it 3? Why is there such a big gap in between? Tell me what I need to know. If it's different amounts for different vegetables, tell the customer what it is, or just give them a figure of 200 or 300 or whatever it is. Mix well after applying to the soil. When planting seedlings in the ground, pour 20. So we've gone from when growing seedlings, in the same sentence, when planting seedlings, pour 20 to 40 grams, again, what is it, 20 or 40, 1 to 2 tablespoons into the hole, which makes sense for seedlings, and mix thoroughly with the ground when feeding. 100. So then we've gone on to a third instruction. So I think here there are 3 sentences. Mix well after applying to the soil. There's one sentence, full stop there, new sentence. When planting seedlings in the ground, pour 20 to 40 grams into the fertiliser into the hole and mix thoroughly with the ground. I think that's the second sentence. And there's a third sentence, when feeding, well, when should I feed? Here's the thing. First of all, this doesn't make any sense. It needs full stops. It's not a lesson in English, but it will just make it, again, I need to make decisions about what I'm going to buy, and I need clear instructions. And actually, if you look at the Latvian version, it's exactly the same. There are no full stops other than these abbreviations. No full stop up there as well. I think what someone's done, either the site owner, the manufacturing company, or the marketing company that have made the website, have just stuck that into Google Translate and translated it into English. In fact, I did that myself, and it's exactly what has happened. So it doesn't make any sense. They've shortcutted it, made a shortcut, and it hasn't worked. So also with that, we need to know, when should I feed again? How long after? 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 weeks, whatever. What is the suggested feeding plan? Okay, enough of that. If we just quickly look at the Kekula website, which was the little food waste granules, you can see there's no English for this, but you can see that here in spring apply fertiliser, and per 10 metre squared for carrots do this much, and beetroot. For cabbage do this much, for celery and garlic do this much, and tomatoes do this much, etc, etc. So there's a really good breakdown per vegetable of how much you should use. It's in litres. However, they do tell you that 1 litre is the equivalent of 800 grams, and they also tell you a handful is about 20 to 30 grams, which is really helpful information. if you want to make an informed decision about how much to use. And this particular product is pretty good for usage. You know, it's those tiny little granules, easy to use and distribute. So that's really quite helpful instructions. There's just no follow-up information. So is there any fertilising, additional fertilising required later on in the season? Formula 4X green okay. It's great that the page is in English. All the information is there. But soil preparation, spread and incorporate the granules into the soil where the seeds are to be sown. So nothing about this. It should start with 4 seeds. Prepare the soil by incorporating the granules into the soil where the seeds are sown. 60 to 120. We've got this thing again where there's this wide range. Why can't they just say exactly what you need to do? And if it's different vegetables, tell me what I need to do for the different vegetables. Don't leave me guessing. Don't make me think is the rule in marketing. If you make someone think, they'll choose another product. Planting bulbs, tubers or seedlings, understandable. Again, wide range. Orchards, not really relevant to us. But so there's nothing about follow-up, additional feeding regime or anything like that. Just this soil preparation for seeds and for transplants. If we look at like biolana, the sheep's wool pellets, not very clear on the screen here, but maybe I can show a shot of the packaging. On the packaging itself, which is where you want it, are crystal clear instructions in Latvian and in English how many grams of the product you use for different vegetables. This is where people want it. They pick the product off the shelf when they're about to buy it. They turn it over, look at the instructions, and it's crystal clear how much you use. Bang. That's what it should be. This product didn't have any follow-up instructions, so we don't know how to feed. That was the one thing that's missing. It may be that because it's quite a strong nitrogen product, there is no follow-up. But you still need to tell someone no need to follow up with feeding. You know, that needs to be there. So that instruction wasn't there. And their website is good English as well. All in English. Very detailed data about how to use the product and stuff like that. Plant Eye Boost was another one. All in English. Brilliant. Slightly confusing. This is the Mesalulum's products. Same packaging, different name. What I did like was that they got it. This is what I want to see: an exact amount per meter squared. Approximately is fine, but you know they give you one figure. There's not between 125 to 150. It's just one figure. And mix it into the soil roots of the plant. So I don't know again about any pre-feeding. Anything like that, or post-feeding. No notes about that. The second product of Califex is the organic mesalums with kind of kelp meal, whatever. If you remember, it was quite acidic. Again, instructions not as... The weird one here is they've got full stops in this one. They've got full stops, so why the other one hasn't, I don't know. Dosage... Again, there's a wide range. Make it clear what we should be using per square meter. No follow-up instructions. Here's the weird thing. Suitable for professional use. So is that a product for normal gardeners or not? Then the second thing was all types of cultivated and ornamental plants. So not vegetables then. So you're thinking, why have I bought this product then if it's not for vegetables? And then here we've got the fertilizer is especially effective for growing bush, not uniquely, but just especially effective for growing bush fruit, berry plants, gooseberries, raspberries, black and red currants, etc. So why have I bought it? Well, when I was in the shop, here is the picture that you see. It's a bowl of vegetables, a basket of vegetables and fruit, tomatoes. We've got broccoli, carrots, spinach, something leafy, corn on the cob, cabbage. Yeah, vegetables. So if it's not for vegetables, why is there a basket of vegetables on the front cover? So obviously I'm left a bit confused. What is it exactly for? So need to work that out. Show people on a picture what. That's why I bought it. Have I bought the right thing or have I bought the wrong thing? And why is it only suitable for professional use? Or is it also suitable for professional use? I don't want to pick holes in English really, but that's just quite confusing. That took a bit of time because I really wanted to kind of expose how messed up the whole instructions thing was. And I think the industry needs a standardization of instructions to make it helpful and easy for people to understand how to use the product. Here's a very simple suggestion for me. This is the absolute bare minimum. If they could go into more detail, it would be fantastic, such as what to use for different vegetables. Obviously, carrots, beetroots need less nitrogen, for example, than, say, a cabbage. And additionally, a cabbage might be in the ground for 120 days, clearly requires more than one dose of fertiliser. Come back to that in a minute. So very simply, we just need to know for seeds, need to prepare the soil and how much to use per square metre. The other kind of elephant in the room with this is that, and it's not mentioned anywhere, is all organic fertiliser is not plant available from the moment you use it. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that fertiliser to break down in the soil and become plant available, without getting into too much of the science about how all that works. No one mentions that. So for seeds, you definitely need to be preparing the ground beforehand and using that. For transplants, they will have some feed in their compost that they're seated in. So that's not something of a problem. But clear instructions, what to use for seeds, how to use it for transplants, and then any further or additional fertilising, which can either, and how to do that. So either side dress using the product and then water it in, or dilute the product in so many litres of water or something like that. And how often you need to do that. Whether it's one more application in the middle of the season or every 4 weeks or whatever it is. Or not at all. If it's not needed, then fine. But that needs to be made absolutely clear. The other slight elephant in the room, which I think from a business marketing point of view really stood out to me, is no one is recommending that they refertilise with their own product, and especially companies like Green OK, which have a really good range of products. If we look at Green OK, have a lot of fertilising products, liquid or granular. And humus products, all sorts of things that you could use. Why are they not recommending that they use their own products? Like, apply our Green OK Garden Forex products at the start of the season, and then Formula Forex, sorry, and then after 4 weeks use our vegetables product. So even this says every 2 weeks during the vegetation period. So I find it bizarre that they're not recommending, they're not trying to cross-sell their own products on the packaging of a product. So that's just something that's jumped out to me. Of course, it's additionally, there is probably a very good case for companies working with each other to cross-sell each other's products where they don't have a product that's suitable. That could be a problem. If we don't have something that's suitable to use as a fertiliser, we won't say anything at all because we don't want someone using someone else's product, so better to say nothing at all. And that's not fair to the customer, is it? If your product's not good enough at the start, well, if your product is good at the start but not good enough for the whole season, then don't hide it. Let's be open and honest and inform the customer, because at the end of the day, the customer is then going to have a bad experience and they will not buy your product again next year. That's the reality of what could happen. So there's an example of how we could better communicate the instructions to customers. So that's non-performance related results. Let's move on to the performance related results. So here we've got a much greater mix in the results. The three things I looked at are soil exposure, tomato weight, and the beetroot harvest, which was anecdotal, whereas these were, they were a metric I could actually measure. And I simply gave, for the soil exposure, the one with the least exposure, the flour fish meal, got the highest number, and then it went down by 1 point per product. Although, some of them were quite close. There is a big difference here. It kind of jumped. So these top 3 products performed really well, and then the rest not quite so much. With the tomato weight, it was simply a case of weighing the harvest of tomatoes. It was irrelevant that they were green. That was down to the climate this summer, really. But it could tell you how much they were yielding. The green OK performed least there. And then the beetroot, I took a call on it. Some was pretty obvious, as you saw in the video. It's obvious that the fish meal was a 10 because they were kind of really, they weren't huge, but they were big. And then the bottom few were quite difficult to work out. So the bottom 3, I just kept the score at 4 rather than, I couldn't really call it, to be honest. And here we have the performance rated results here. So you can see that the fish meal did very well, and both actually the Cabbages products did very well. And then I guess the last thing is just to look at the overall results. So Cabbages products did very well, but I mean, it's again much of a muchness. I think the Biolana wool pellets was kind of, but it's very close, these 3. And actually the mesotheliums also did well. Just talking about I just want to talk the Raksi alpaca poop, really, because it didn't do so well, obviously. I think, my personal opinion is, if Raksi, they stopped using pellets and moved to a crumb or a granulated product, which was much smaller, how would it be in Latvian? Smolkāk drupata, I think would be the correct pronunciation. So smaller crumbs, almost like a powder, that would perform much better. It would be a lot easier to distribute, a lot easier to use. Their instructions are fantastic. It was just the product let it down a bit. I think also then I love the idea that you can mix it into water and then water it later. And I think if it was a crumb or a small granule, much smaller granule than what they make it now, it would perform a lot better. And if I had a way to grind up myself, I probably would have a go at that. So there's the overall results. Make of them what you will, really. Let me know in the comments how you feel. If you've got this far, then thank you very much for watching the video. Let me know in the comments, were there any surprises? What did you like? What didn't you like? What would you like more information about? Do you use any of these products? If so, which ones? How do you feel about them? Are you surprised by the results? Just let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Bye for now.